Hello friends, and welcome back to my crafty space. In today's video, I am going to do the first of a brand new series of videos called the Stamp Your Story series. In this series, it is my plan every month to pick one stamp set, which I already have a list, and I'll make sure to link that in our post below. I will be using one stamp set every month to design 2 different layouts, and then to also give you some additional ideas for how to use it to tell stories about your life. This month we are using the before and after stamp set from Ali Edwards. This I had previously thought that this was a story stamp, but now I'm pretty sure that it is not a story stamp, but rather was just a stamp inside of Ali's shop that's no longer available. So if you have the before and after stamp set, then that's what I'm going to be using this month. However, there are a bunch of other stamp sets that have similar sentiments on them that you could totally use instead, such as the ampersand story kit, the prompts, I think it's called the prompts stamp set, where it has the same right now sentiment on it. And I'm sure there are many, many others that you potentially have in your stash. Before we get into today's process video, which today is going to be the first of 2 that you will see this week, I first want to talk about the stamp set and give you guys some different ideas of story prompts that you could potentially tell the story of with it. So first and foremost, we've got the 2 titles, the large before and the large after. A couple of different ideas come to mind for me when we're talking about before and after sentiments. First, for me, definitely is home renovations. We are in the middle of a ton of house projects, and this stamp set is perfect for telling the story of the space before and then the space after we have renovated it. The process video I'm going to be working on for you today is actually going to be that exact story, but about our pantry. So a before picture and an after picture of our pantry and all the steps that it took us to get from A to B. There's also some smaller stamp sets that say the story before and the story after, where you could do a similar thing, but maybe on a smaller scale. You could create a journaling card that is a 3x4 and stamp the story before up at the top, and then journal about the story before. And then the same thing for the story after, where you could have another journaling card where you stamp the story after and write your journaling on that one too. That would be a fantastic way to use the smaller ones here. The larger ones, you could use them as a giant title. You could create a background paper with them by repeat stamping them either in the same ink all over the same page, or you could do it in an ombre or a rainbow or something like that. You could use that pattern paper to back your journaling, to back your photos, or just as your whole page foundation. You could also stamp these out and fussy cut them, prop them up on some foam tape potentially, or you could do a couple of them and cut out a couple, you could layer them up on a couple pieces of cardstock or on some chipboard and create your own chipboard titles that then pop off of the page. And one of the things that I'm going to try this time is heat embossing it. So I'm going to stamp it onto my story, put my embossing powder on that, heat it up, and give it that, raised kind of texture on the page. So that's a way to take your stamp set and go from something that's very flat to something that has a little bit more texture and dimension to it. Some other stamp sets on here that popped out to me is this one right here that says right now. I love telling stories about right now, and I'm actually going to use this one in my second process video this week to create a layout using journaling tags, where I will stamp this right now as my title, and I'm also going to use this one that says the story as a layering element with the right now title. So it'll say the story right now, and I love that. You can also do the same thing with let's do this, and then you could say let's do this right now. And tell a story about something that you are excited to get a start on. That would be another great way to use this right now title. Another thing in here on this particular stamp set is 2 sentiments, one that says first this, and then you have then this. And this is an idea that would work with the ampersand kit too, because the ampersand has and then, and then, and then, right? So I want to use this in my renovation story, but you could use it for whatever story you want to, where you stamp first this, and it could be a photo that represents what you did first, or it could be journaling that represents what you did first. And then to stamp out then this and add another photo or journaling, then this, add another photo or journaling, and keep going until your story is completed. That could be something to do with a project that you're working on where you've got multiple steps in order to complete that project. But you could also use that to tell about a day, right? A day in your life. First we did this, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then we did that, right? So that's a great way to use that for a story that's not necessarily before and after. It's more of a continuous throughout your day type of story. A few of these in here I feel like would be really good for a project like One Little Word, or some just reflective journaling, some, some self-journaling type of projects. So we have Life Moves On, which you could take from a really deep level and talk about things that you're moving on from in your own life, or it could simply be the evolution of our lives as we grow through the different stages and ages of our existence, right? Life moving on. It's always moving on and moving forward, right? So I love this little sentiment. I like that it's got this little scribbled box around it. Kind of like a wonky rectangle. And I love the idea of using this at the top of a journaling card as well. You could put this on a 3x4 journaling card and have the space for journaling or a photo, or you could make even smaller story cards, kind of like Allie releases in some of her kits that are 2x3. So then you could stamp it at the top and then just have a little teeny bit of journaling underneath that, so you don't have to go quite as in depth. This one over here that says change happens is very similar to Life Moves On, where it's just talking about, or the idea that change is always consistent, right? And how are things changing? What is currently changing in your life? That one's really fun. These ones that have the box around them, so this Life Moves On, first things first, change happens. One of the things I love about these types of stamps is that you can put them onto a separate piece of paper. It could be vellum, it could be sticker paper, it could be just regular cardstock, it could be patterned cardstock or a colored cardstock. And then you can fussy cut that out and use it as an embellishment instead of stamping it directly onto your layout, if that makes sense. So you can get creative with how to use those. The fact that it's got the box around the outside makes it appear as though it's something meant to be on top of something else already. So I like that idea. Another thing with these before and after stamps, there's one that says hello change and one that says remembering. I like the idea of layering these up. So you've got remembering before, and maybe you put that word remembering right in between the B and the F. And then we have hello change, which I like the idea of putting that right above the A in after. So then you've got remembering before and hello change for after. I think that is another great way to use multiple stamps to create layered titles. Then let me see if there's anything else in here that I want to talk about. So maybe the story evolution. Remember how I talked about life moves on and our lives evolving, right? We are constantly evolving and changing. So this story evolution is a really cool one to layer with this life moves on or change happens. But also you could use that to just simply tell the story about how a particular story or event evolved over time. So the evolution of the story. This one's really small, which makes it difficult to use for a large title, right? But what you could do is take this story evolution, and let's say you have a 3x4 card, you could mask off the top portion. So maybe you have like an inch at the top, and then just repeat stamp it at the top of that. So it serves as almost a title and almost a pattern paper. And then you can use the bottom part of that to create your journaling or for space for a photo. All right, well, I hope that gives you some different ideas on how to use this stamp to tell different types of stories, and perhaps gives you some ideas of different ways to use the stamp to create embellishments or titles or that sort of thing. What I'm going to do now is head over to my computer and get some photos and journaling printed off for my first story, which is the home remodel of our pantry. So I'm going to go get my photos and my journaling, and then we'll come back over here and we'll get to work on that layout. Once I have that layout done, and I'll talk you through the whole process, we'll slow down. I will read you my journaling for that particular story, and then we'll call our layout for today done. So let's go ahead and get started with creating a layout. All right, friends, jumping into our layout here. First thing I'm going to do is take these two photos that I printed at 2 inches by 3.75 inches, and I'm going to trim them out of the photo paper. This right here is a picture of the before, and then here's the picture of the after of our pantry project, which is what this layout's going to be all about. So what I'm going to do is pull off the before and after stamp sentiments. Those are going to serve as my main title. I showed you there I'm going to use some black embossing powder from Tim Holtz in order to get some different type of texture onto the page. And I'm also going to be using both the Columbia and the Otter Rock color ink pads from Ali Edwards in order to get a little bit more color onto this layout as well. In addition to the before and the after, I also pulled out the stamp sentiments that said first this and then this, and I'm planning to go ahead and use those for my journaling titles. But one of the things I decided later as I was looking over my page here was to create a stamped or a repeat stamped background for my photos and those titles to sit on top of. It felt really plain to put everything on top of just plain white cardstock. Sometimes I'm okay with that, and other times I just want there to be a little bit more color. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the stamp sentiment that says the story before, and I'm inking that up in the Columbia teal color from Ali, stamping it in a diagonal down the down a portion of the page here. Then when I get about roughly halfway down, I'm going to switch my stamp set to the one that says the story of after, and I'm going to stamp that the rest of the way on this page. The cool thing about this is because everything is stamped in the same color ink, and because the font, it's Ali's handwriting, the font is the same for both of those stamp sentiments, you don't really notice that the sentiment changes until you look a little bit closer at the paper. Even when I get the photos on here and my larger stamped sentiment titles, you can still see the difference between the two sentiments, the one that says the story of before and the one that says the story of after. And I think that's really cool. It just gives it a little bit of extra interest when you are looking at the page itself. Next, I'm using that Otter Rock gray color to stamp the sentiment first this on top of that very first paragraph, and then all of the rest of them are going to say then this. One thing that I regret just a little bit with these titles is not digging out my ampersand stickers. I have a bunch of the chipboard and some of the puffy stickers and some of the cardstock stickers still left over from the ampersand kit. And it's actually not a bad thing because they're extremely versatile. You can use them on so many different layouts. I kind of wish I would have started all of the then this with an ampersand at the beginning. So it would have said first this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and so on. I think that that would have added a little bit more to the right side of this layout. I could have given it some dimension by using chipboard or puffy stickers, or I could have at least put some more color onto the page by choosing the cardstock ones that had different colors to them. So something to think about if this is a layout that you also want to tell some kind of story like this. For the photos, I wanted to add them to some kind of matte background so that they popped out a little bit more from the repeat stamp background I created. So I pulled over a darker gray cardstock, one that I felt the tone of it went decent enough with the titles on the right side of the page. And then I just backed each of the photos with that, making sure to leave just a little thin piece peeking out from all of the different sides. After letting my stamped backgrounds dry a little bit, I then came back about an hour or so later. Erin and I had to go run an errand, so it worked out to just kind of leave it, let it dry, and then come back and do this embossing portion. For this, I'm using my scrapbook.com embossing ink, and I just inked it up, put the embossing ink on top of my stamp set, put the before up at the top, the after down at the bottom, covered it up with the black embossing powder there, and then shook off some of it onto the paper so I could then pour it back into the jar. And some of it I just kind of like banged off over top of the garbage so it didn't make too big of a mess. I will grab a paintbrush to just get a little bit more of those tiny little flyaway pieces off of here before I set this with heat using my heat gun. Now that this is looking well enough, I'm going to go ahead and heat this up. It does take a little bit of time to get it to finally melt the embossing powder. One thing I will say is I will try to heat a little bit on the front and then heat a little bit on the back so I don't end up burning or changing the color of the rest of the ink that I've already put on this layout. So that's just a tip that I have, is to heat up both sides, so on the top and on the bottom. Plus, if it starts to warp your paper, you can heat up the back side of it and it will help to bend it back into its proper shape. So now that I've got the before and after fully embossed on there, I love the look of it. I think it looks super bold, and I love that it has a bit of a shinier sheen to it. So it really differentiates it from the rest of the stamping. Next, what I'll do is stick down my photos, and then that pretty much will do it. I'm going to put a date stamp on the bottom. Later, as I'm putting this away, I will decide that this needs something else on it. It's missing something. So I'll go into my puffy sticker ampersands and pull out a really big one that's gray that I will stick between the after and before, which you'll see in the photos later. All right, friends, that completes my layout for today. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing how this one came together today. I am going to go ahead and read my journaling, and then we will call this one done. By the way, I'm really glad I decided to emboss that. I think it gives it this like really different look where it makes those words pop out a little bit more on the page. I think that was such a cool touch for this one. Okay, so let's talk about the journaling. So for this one, I said, first thing was first. We needed to take down all of the old wire shelving to get this project started. I've never been a fan of wire shelves. Things don't stay upright, and it's not as pretty to look at. Then this. Once the shelving was all done, we had our new wood floors installed. They went from a lighter, older style plank to the chunky, dark engineered wood we picked out. I'm loving the darker and more modern floors. Then this. It took us a long time to get to the next stage of this reno project because of the holidays. Once we were past that, the next step of our process was to get the support planks installed on the pantry walls. Then this. After the supports were in place for all of the shelves, Erin worked to get the whole pantry closet repainted with a fresh coat of white paint. It looked a million times better already. Then this. In the meantime, we needed to get the wooden shelves sanded, stained, and finished with a polyurethane. Erin did all of this in the garage while I worked to get ready for the start of the new year. Then this. After the shelves dried, it was time to install. We added the shelves plus a piece of trim across the front. 3 days later, I organized all of our food and put it away in the newly done pantry. We are both obsessed. So that is this one. So just a fun way to document a renovation project in our home. I like to include these types of stories in my memory keeping projects because it is such a big part of living our lives, right? Like we all have some type of home that we're living in, and we're always dreaming about what to do next. How could we improve? Where are the spots in our lives, in our homes, in our relationships where we can grow and evolve into the next version. So this one is just a way to tell a story like that, even though it's not really about any particular person. It's just about getting a project done. All right, friends. Well, I'm going to be back on Wednesday and we'll work on the next layout using the before and after stamp set. The next project's going to be a right now type of story where I'm going to use some tags and create some really fun pockets using vellum. So can't wait to share that layout with you. Until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye, friends.